Mike, check. Justin Hunt. It's all happening. Thank you to everybody rocking with the channel. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to the channel, who has shared a video, who spread the good word on what we're doing over here. It's priceless. I'm blessed and highly favored, so thank you all. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the channel. If you'd like to donate, you can hit the Cash App right up there, or there is a link in the description as well. If you'd like to contribute to the mission, that would be greatly appreciated. And big shout out to my newest members. Thank you for joining this community. Jabari, thanks, K-Dot. Sack Attack, I think that's Sack Attack. Kelly Jones, big shout out to Kelly Jones. N Starks 007, Briscoe the King, Renee Keating, Dion Rule Hack, William Suarez, Awful Bliss. I like some Awful Bliss. All Fem, Mr. G Nugget, Can Ocon, Arcane Install, 9-second applause. Thank you. Word up. Yeah, we just crossed 256 members. If you'd like to join this community, it's probably the easiest way to contribute to the mission. You can hit the description and there's a link to join. So you can just set up a membership that way. But thank you all. Now, big news today. This is actually really big news. So, Kendrick Lamar has spoken. He's actually spoken. He's gone on record. It's not a song. He's actually the cover story for Harper's Bazaar, fashion magazine Harper's Bazaar. I believe he's the fifth male to ever appear on the cover of the magazine, so this is a big deal. They did a Q&A with Kendrick Lamar, so along with the full fashion spread, we've got some new comments from King Kendrick Lamar. SZA actually conducted the interview. So it's an artist-on-artist interview. I think, it's funny with Kendrick Lamar interviews, for me, I mean, being that he is so reserved, generally speaking, the most emotive we ever see him is through his music, to be perfectly honest. I guess maybe in Power. He had a captivating crackhead appearance in Power. That's no shade either. That was actually a really good performance. But I find myself with Kendrick interviews, leaning more into, I guess, what's unsaid than actually what is said, since he is very, very particular with his words. But in this conversation with SZA, I think he was perhaps a little bit more emotive, perhaps. It's a written Q&A, so it's not like we're listening to it. But I personally feel like he might have been a little bit more emotive than I personally find him to be normally, because he's talking to SZA. And so he's talking to another super acclaimed Grammy-winning artist out of the same camp, out of the same culture. And so their conversation is resonating loudly already. So let's look at a couple of the highlights that I really appreciated. Obviously, up first, there is a question about Not Like Us. Now, if you aren't keeping up with these things, Not Like Us has just earned over 1.2 billion streams worldwide. 1.2 billion streams. 1 second applause for 1.2 billion streams. So, which makes it in the top 10 of most successful rap songs this decade in the first 5 months. Okay, so this song is still not slowing down. During the conversation with Kendrick Lamar, SZA actually asked him, what does Not Like Us mean to you? Good question, actually. I actually appreciate this question. Here's what Kendrick said, laughing. Not like us. Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man that I represent, ... SZA jumps in, break the man down for me. Good follow-up. This man has morals. He has values. He believes in something. He stands on something. He's not pandering. I'm sorry. It's crazy how this battle, it's so easy to see everything through the lens of this battle, whether it comes from Kendrick or Drake or truthfully J. Cole, because I read this sentence. Chances are this conversation happened way before Port Antonio. Right. Definitely happened after the Dreamville apology or whatever he was doing on stage. J. Cole was doing on Dreamville Fest. But chances are this came out before Port Antonio. So, yeah. When I read that line, this man has morals, he has values, he believes in something, he stands on something, he's not pandering. That he stands on something, he's not pandering part, my mind immediately went to J. Cole. J. Cole could use some standing on something, some not pandering. I don't know. 1 second applause for J. Cole. I added that. That's just my point of view. Nevertheless, Kendrick continues. He's a man who can recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes, and can dig deep down into fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he's less of a man. That's a big thing. That's a big thing. You know, we live in this era of, you know, apologies look like weakness, especially in the political landscape, especially in right-wing media, particularly in right-wing media. I think a lot of this stuff plays into the manosphere, a lot of manosphere conversations where, you know, admitting that you were wrong or admitting that you were incorrect, a lot of times is viewed as weakness. A lot of times also it's just it's become a debate tactic to never say that you were wrong or to say that you got something wrong. But I actually really agree with what Kendrick said right here. He said he is a man who can recognize his mistakes and not be afraid to share the mistakes and dig deep down into fear-based ideologies or experiences to be able to express them without feeling like he's less of a man. That's a big one. I like that too. Kendrick, he continues. He says, if I'm thinking of not like us, I'm thinking of me and whoever identifies with that. Now I can, and then SZA asks a question. Now, can I say something else in that realm, or you want me to get away from that? Can I ask you something else? And Kendrick says, is it mean? SZA says, no, it's more like, I thought it was really interesting that there was any consensus at all that you might be an angry individual. For me, I don't find that energy that comes from you from an angry place. And actually, the last hour and change pretty much solidifies that it's almost from a yogic, monk-like place. So when you feel the surge of energy in records like that, where is that root? Is it anger? Here's what Kendrick says. This is interesting. I don't believe that I'm an angry person, but I do believe in love and war, and I believe they both need to exist. I think J. Cole should understand that. And my awareness of that allows me to react to things but not identify with them as who I am. Just allowing them to exist and allowing them to flow through me. That's what I believe. Word up. SZA says, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead before I say something crazy. Then Kendrick says, okay, now let me see what's going on with you, man. What I've always loved about you and respected about you is your ability to fully express yourself. How have you been able to navigate that through your music? Do you dread it coming out through certain lyrics? SZA says, I wrote a song last summer that was too honest and I couldn't put it out. I just be telling on myself so crazy and I can't stop. It's like I have to tell on myself so I'm not bored, because otherwise I'm just like, what's the point? When I'm in the studio, it hurts too much sometimes. Maybe that's why I tap in and pretend to be other people. That's why I'm pretending to be you, or pretending to be Frank Ocean, or pretending to be Future, because it's easy. It's easier to be me through their eyes than it is to sit with some of the really harsh things that I say about myself to myself. I guess I want to say nicer things about myself, so I'm like, I guess I shouldn't look through my eyes. I should look through somebody else's. But when I heard Mr. Morale, I was like, I'm not digging deep enough in my art. I'm running from so many things. So now I'm in my bag. I'm like, okay, I'm codependent. I'm a people pleaser. I'm afraid of all these things. I'm so fucking selfish. All these things I tell myself because I have to strip the ego from the bottom. I have to, because I'm bored to death with this iteration of myself. Why am I trying not to be human so bad? Because it hurts so damn bad, because that is the job. No matter how many spirits you talk to or any of that, it just doesn't matter. You have to be here. You're going to be in the ether eventually. It's just not now. And then Kendrick says, that's what I'm talking about. I appreciate you. And then SZA says, I'm laughing at myself for crying, but thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate you too. So that's a pretty interesting back and forth in this conversation here. What really does stand out to me is how he described not like us and what that actually means. Standing on something, not pandering, you know, being who you are and being okay to let emotions run through you and not necessarily have those emotions define you. I thought that was really powerful. Now, here's two other points that I thought were really interesting in this conversation. SZA asked him if he did ayahuasca. Ayahuasca. I suggest some ayahuasca. Strip their ego from the bottom. 1 second applause for Meet the Grams. So SZA says, it's very honest. Speaking of honesty and ego, how have you done ayahuasca? Kendrick says, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. Okay. So, all right, well, I too have heard that ayahuasca strips the ego from the bottom, even if I haven't done it either. But I thought that was just a great straight up line because it was a suggestion that Kendrick had for Drake. So that part was interesting. Anyone at home wondering if Kendrick's done ayahuasca? He has not. But that does transition into another point that I thought was really interesting in this conversation. So SZA says, what? I wonder how you're arriving at all these conclusions. I want to talk to you about your spiritual practices. How many spiritual practices contribute to your day-to-day? Kendrick, all day, every day. SZA, all day is a ceremony? Kendrick, ain't no bullshit, ain't no cliche, but I literally talk to God. Like it's to a point where I'll be starting to think I'm going crazy, but then he has to remind me, no, this is really me. My early morning practice is that I have to run. When I started running, that's where I started to understand. There was this threshold of pain in the spirituality for me. I remember my shins was aching and I was like, I got 1 mile to go. Then I get whispers and downloads and start talking about shit that I want to know about. And the next thing, I'm 3 miles in, 4 miles in, I wake up and do that shit every day. SZA, loss of self. You have to break yourself. Kendrick, I have to. SZA, I'm grateful for the God tea. Sidebar, what do you feel like your top 3 contributing factors to self-transformation in the last few years have been? Kendrick, the power of honesty and being honest with myself. Perspective about the person sitting across from me. And learning that vulnerability is not a weakness. The last one probably been one I'm still developing. That last one is probably one I'm still developing. Vulnerability is not a weakness. You can see the themes run through this conversation. And I think it definitely ties to where it seems like Kendrick has been particularly since Damn, in my opinion, but definitely since Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper. Quick note about this line here where he says, but I literally talk to God. Like it's to a point where I'll be starting to think I'm going crazy, but then he has to remind me, no, this is really me. He said something very similar during his Compton College commencement speech. Compton College commencement speech, yeah. I mean, he was telling the graduates, the 2024 graduating class, that, talk to God. He's really there. I get up, I run on the beach every day. I talk to him every day. Like he's sitting right there every day. You know what I mean? And so, you can definitely see the spiritual connection that he has with higher energies through this conversation, through similar conversations like when he gave that speech at Compton College, through all the tracks in this battle, and generally speaking, through the layers of his music. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see that this tread line is still here in this conversation, since this is the first time we've heard him speak outside of the pop out, outside of his Compton College speech. And yeah, I think that's probably it. So this is really the third time, if I'm not mistaken, outside of maybe a tweet or two. He did say that Doechii is the hardest. 1 second applause for Doechii. So you can see that this is all running through the conversation here. Now, I thought this part was really dope too. Okay, so on that conversation, on that topic of vulnerability, SZA asked, when was the last time you cried? When was the first time you cried? Kendrick said, I would say the last time I cried was probably on Mr. Morale, 2022's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, on the Mother I Sober record. That shit was deep for me. SZA, would you say you've done more crying recently than you have in your life? Kendrick, now? Yeah, I have to. SZA, it's cleansing. Kendrick, it might be easier for you though. I cry all the time. I'm going to cry right now because that is just beautiful. Wait, you didn't tell me what was the first time you allowed it to happen. Kendrick, this is really cool. The first time I allowed it to happen is documented, actually on stage in 2011, when Dr. Dre and Snoop, the whole West Coast was out, and they was like, this is the torch that we were handing off. Dr. Dre passed me the torch, and a burst of energy just came out, and I had to let it flow. My tears is all on the internet, and now I look back, and I love that moment. I love that that happened, because it showed me in real time expressing myself and seeing all the work that I put forth actually come to life in that moment. 1 second applause for crying on stage with Dr. Dre. Now, you know, the thing that stands out to me is that throughout this conversation, obviously she asked him, what does not like us mean to you? So you can pull whatever you want from your answers there. So if there's any, if that's what not like us means to Kendrick, right? Since they not like us is a diss track. Yeah, well, I guess we're saying Drake is not like Kendrick, not like us, right? I read that, and that one line about the pandering and standing on whatever, that sounded like J. Cole to me. I'm not saying that Kendrick is doing any of these things, but there's so many lines from this battle, as I reference all the time, that seem to connect to everything that's happening in hip-hop. And now you have Kendrick actually speaking. And here's another one of those moments, because I'm a big fan of tailor-made freestyle, as I've made a video explaining that you guys didn't really watch. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm happy to be on that island by myself. 1 second applause for being on the island by myself. But I love that song. And that song does a great job of taking Tupac's moment at the House of Blues and Snoop's moment at the House of Blues with Kendrick and using them as a storytelling device in that song. And so that viral video of Kendrick crying has been around for a long time. It's one of the more touching moments, I think, in Kendrick Lamar's career that we've been able to see on record at any point in time. But turns out that's his first time he's allowed himself to really cry. I mean, I assume he really means publicly, but perhaps, maybe, the environment he grew up in wasn't necessarily one where he was able to, let his vulnerabilities flow organically that way. I mean, that's a lot of our stories, truthfully. And so he brings that back up in this conversation as the first time he cried. So we got Mother I Sober, which comes up in the Heart Part 6, right? That's the one that, as Professor Sky says, Drake misunderstood the text. Okay. And now we've got this moment here from Taylor Made Freestyle also showing up in this conversation, as well as 2 big moments in his life where he fully let his vulnerabilities flow. I really appreciate this conversation. I'll put a link in the description for anyone who wants to check it out. It's definitely worth a read. It's a very easy read. It's not very long. He talks about tapping into his feminine energy, and he needs that more with his music, particularly trying to make music that can resonate with all different types of people. Whereas, his father's energy, the male energy, masculine energy, it was so pronounced and so paramount through most of his life that in music, getting in touch with his feminine energy has helped him out quite a bit. There's some cool things that SZA shares about her experiences and her, you can definitely tell her reverence for Kendrick in this conversation. So overall, I think, though I tend to be a bit hit and miss on artists' interviews, then, if there's an artist who's really a fan of somebody, it could be really awesome. If it's an artist who just kind of knows their homie, it could be dope if they're focused, or it could just be 2 guys just being friends talking and you don't necessarily get anything past that. I think this was actually a really good balance, from a conversation standpoint. You have SZA offering things about her life, offering things that she's experienced, but genuinely asking questions of Kendrick, just about his mindset, his spirituality, his energy, things that, one, I don't think that the general public really gets a full view on when it comes to Kendrick. 2, you can tell there's trust between them. So, he's, in my opinion, like I said in the beginning, he does a really good job. This one seems like he's a bit more emotive than what I'm used to from his conversations. But 3, also, you do have 2 artists who have had incredible success over the past 5 years, 10 years or so, on the same label. And, just kind of have an understanding of what it's like to a degree, rise around the same time. To a degree, right? And so It's a great read for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. These are my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. My name is Justin Hunt. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow at The Company Man on everything. It's all happening.
Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. The mathematical breakdown of this mighty game of rap we in. It's boom bapping. Systematical culture views that's radical, it's all happening. Shaking hands and dabbing them. Life through the lens of hip hop, from trip hop to yes, yes, y'all, you don't stop, you don't stop. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening. Justin Hunt is here, it's all happening. It's all happening, yes, it's all happening.